Somewhere in Tehran, a woman closes her curtains before opening her Bible. She doesn't own a church. She has never been baptized in public. She has never sung a hymn loud enough for her neighbors to hear. But every week, she gathers with a small group of people in her living room, and together, they do something that could get every single one of them arrested. They worship Jesus. Openly, completely, without apology. Just not where anyone outside that room can see. This is not an isolated story. Across the Muslim world, in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Algeria, and dozens of other nations where Islam is not just a religion but the law. Something is happening that no government has been able to stop. Men and women are converting to Christianity at a rate that researchers are calling one of the most remarkable religious shifts of the 21st century. Not in churches, not in public, underground, in living rooms, in basements, in whispered conversations that carry more weight than any sermon preached from a safe pulpit in a free country. Here is what makes this story so difficult to explain away. These are not people converting because it's convenient. In most of these nations, leaving Islam, apostasy, is not just socially unacceptable, it is legally punishable. In some countries, it carries the death penalty. In others, it means prison, forced psychiatric treatment, or complete removal from your family and community. The people in this video are choosing Jesus knowing exactly what it costs, and they are choosing him anyway. The gospel reaching Islam was never supposed to look like this. For centuries, missiologists, people who study how faith spreads, considered the Islamic world the most resistant territory on earth to Christian history. Closed borders, closed minds, a theological framework that specifically addressed and rejected Christian claims. A legal system designed to prevent conversion. Every door seemed locked, and yet somehow, from inside those locked rooms, a movement started growing that the locks couldn't contain. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how that happened. Which nations are at the center of it, what it cost the people who started it, and why experts who have spent their careers studying Christian persecution in the Middle East are saying that what is happening right now may be the most significant chapter in the story of the gospel since the book of Acts. This is not a small story. This is one of the biggest things happening on earth right now. And almost nobody is talking about it. Subscribe. This trail is just beginning. To understand what is happening in the Islamic world today, you first need to understand the world the gospel encountered when it tried to enter. And that world wasn't just different from the Christian West. It was built on a theological foundation that specifically, deliberately, and completely closed the door for anyone who wanted to leave. Islam is not just a religion. In its classical form, it is a total system covering law, politics, family, identity, and eternity. And inside that system, leaving the faith is not a personal choice. It is a betrayal. The word for that is apostasy. And in the Islamic world, apostasy is not just a sin, it is a crime. In Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iran, and more than a dozen other nations, converting from Islam to any other faith can result in imprisonment, loss of child custody, forced dissolution of marriage, and in extreme cases, execution. But here is the detail most people in the West don't understand. Even where the law doesn't formally execute apostates, social pressure frequently does the same work. Families expel their children. Communities cut people off completely. The cost of leaving Islam was designed to be unbearable. This didn't happen by accident. When the Prophet Muhammad established Islam in the 7th century, he built a community where faith and collective identity were inseparable. Being Muslim wasn't just what you believed. It was who you were, where you came from, how your family functioned, how your city organized itself. Over centuries, Islamic empires codified this into law. Sharia, Islamic law, made no clear distinction between religion and state, because for classical Islam, that distinction simply didn't exist. Christian history and Islamic history met repeatedly at that border, and the encounter was rarely peaceful. And then there was the theology. Islam didn't ignore Jesus. It included him. In the Quran, Jesus is the honored prophet, born of a virgin, who performed miracles. But the idea that he was the Son of God, that he died on the cross, that he rose again, all of that is specifically rejected. Islam was built in part as a correction to Christianity, which means a Muslim who encounters the gospel isn't encountering something completely foreign. They are encountering something familiar that they were taught is a corrupted version of the truth. Convincing someone like that requires much more than a simple argument. This was the world the gospel tried to enter. A world with theological, legal, social, and family walls, all pointing in the same direction. Stay where you are, believe what you have always believed, or pay a price that most people would never be willing to pay. For centuries, those walls worked. Conversion rates from Islam to Christianity were so low, they were barely measured. Missionaries came and went without leaving a visible trace. The Islamic world seemed impenetrable. And then something changed. In the 1950s, a small Christian radio station began broadcasting gospel messages in Arabic across the Middle East. Nobody expected much. The signal was weak, the audience was invisible, and there was no way to measure whether anyone was actually listening. But letters started arriving, carefully written, unsigned, postmarked from cities across Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Algeria. People were listening, people were responding, and for the first time, missionaries realized something critical. You don't need to physically enter a country to plant a seed inside it. You just need a signal that can cross a border that a person cannot. That discovery changed everything. Through the second half of the 20th century, Christian missionaries targeting the Muslim world built an entire infrastructure of invisible reach. Radio stations multiplied. Organizations like Trans World Radio and FEBI began broadcasting in Farsi, Arabic, Urdu, and dozens of other languages, reaching into living rooms across nations that had never permitted a single missionary to set foot inside their borders. The content was careful, non-confrontational, and deeply personal. Not arguments, stories. The story of Jesus, told in the language and rhythm of the people listening. Then came satellite television. In the 1990s, channels like SAT-7 began broadcasting Christian programming across the Middle East and North Africa, and Islamic governments had no way to stop it. A satellite dish on a rooftop was impossible to police at scale. Aqui estava a versão reduzida em inglês, mantendo o impacto e o envolvimento. For the first time, families in closed nations could watch baptisms, hear testimonies, and see what Christian culture actually looked like from the inside. Not the distorted version they had been taught, but real people worshiping a God they had chosen freely. Then came the internet and the smartphone. Suddenly, a teenager in Tehran or Riyadh could type a question about Jesus into a search engine at midnight and find answers no government had ever provided. They could watch videos, read testimonies, ask questions anonymously, without anyone knowing. The walls built over 14 centuries were facing something they had never been designed to stop. A signal with no body, no border, and no address to raid. What happens when the most locked door in the world starts opening from the inside? In 1979, the year of the Islamic Revolution, there were an estimated 500 Christians of Muslim background in all of Iran. 500 in a nation of tens of millions. Today that number sits between 500,000 and 1 million. In 40 years, inside one of the most repressive governments on earth, the Iranian church grew by up to 2,000%. Nobody predicted that. Nobody even thought it was possible. To understand why, you have to understand what the revolution actually did. Khomeini didn't just change the government. He fused it with Islam so completely that for millions of Iranians, becoming disillusioned with the regime meant becoming disillusioned with Islam itself. A generation raised watching clerics control every aspect of public life began quietly asking a question their parents never had space to ask. What if the religion enforcing all of this isn't actually what God looks like? Into that spiritual vacuum came the signals. Farsi language Christian satellite channels, online communities, smuggled Bibles, and something even more unexpected, dreams. Iranians who had never encountered a missionary, never watched a Christian broadcast, never held a Bible were reporting dreams of a figure in white who identified himself as Jesus. Theologians debate what to make of that. The people who had those dreams don't debate it at all. The underground church developed a structure unlike anything in Western Christian history. No buildings, no denominations. Small groups of 5 to 15 people meeting in rotating locations, specifically to avoid government surveillance. When one group was discovered and arrested, the movement didn't collapse. It splintered into 3 more groups the government didn't know about yet. The Iranian government responded with force. Pastors arrested, converts imprisoned, leaders killed. And the movement kept growing anyway. In 2020, researchers estimated Iran's underground church was adding thousands of new believers every month. Persecution turned out to be the worst possible strategy. Every arrest made the story more compelling. Every martyr planted 10 more seeds. There is a woman in Saudi Arabia, her name is not being shared for her protection, who converted to Christianity after stumbling onto a Farsi language satellite channel. She spent 2 years reading everything she could find online before telling a single person what she believed, not because she wasn't certain, because she was doing the math. Her husband could divorce her and keep their children. Her father could disown her. Her employer could fire her. Her government could imprison her. She knew all of that before she ever said the word Jesus out loud to another human being. She said it anyway. It cost her nearly everything. She considers it the best decision she ever made. That story is not exceptional. It is the template. Across Iran, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and Algeria, the pattern repeats with remarkable consistency. A person encounters the gospel through a screen, a conversation, or an unexplained internal experience. They process it privately for months or years. They make a decision, And then they face a reckoning with every human structure their life was built on: family, marriage, employment, safety, identity. All of it goes on the table at once. In Afghanistan, apostasy isn't processed through courts. It's handled immediately by family. Converts have been killed by fathers and brothers who considered it their religious obligation to act. The underground church there numbers only in the thousands, making it one of the smallest and most endangered Christian communities on earth. Every single believer there made a calculation most people reading this will never have to make. Algeria tells a different story. A quiet Berber Christian movement had been growing in the Kabylie region, people reconnecting with a pre-Islamic North African identity that stretches back to Augustine of Hippo in the 4th century. By the 2000s, it had grown large enough that the government began closing churches and arresting pastors. What makes Algeria significant is this: the gospel reaching Islam isn't always a modern phenomenon. Sometimes it's a recovery of something that was always there, buried under centuries of history, waiting to be found again. And then there is the cost that doesn't make the news. Not imprisonment, not execution, just the quiet daily weight of a divided life, praying in secret, sitting through Friday prayers while believing something completely different, watching your children be raised in a faith you've left, knowing that telling them the truth could destroy everything. For most secret Christians in Islamic countries, the cost isn't a dramatic moment of martyrdom. It's 1,000 small moments of silence, each one chosen deliberately, each carrying the full weight of everything that would be lost. Now the numbers. According to researchers at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, more Muslims have converted to Christianity in the last 50 years than in the previous 14 centuries combined. Read that again. 14 centuries of near-zero conversion, followed by 50 years of explosive growth, happening precisely when Islamic governments became more repressive, not less. The underground church is not surviving despite the pressure. In many documented cases, it is growing because of it. There's something about watching a person choose faith at enormous personal cost that no argument can replicate. When a Saudi woman loses her marriage for Jesus, some of the people watching don't just see a tragedy. They see a conviction so deep it survived the worst possible test. When an Iranian pastor goes to prison and comes out still believing, still planting churches, people don't just see resilience, they see evidence. The numbers tell their own story. In 1900, there were virtually no Christians of Muslim background in the Islamic world. By 2000, researchers estimated 2 million. By 2020, between 10 and 16 million. And those are only the ones researchers could count. This is not a projection or a hope. It is a documented, measurable reality that secular researchers with no theological agenda are struggling to account for. What does this church look like from the inside? Nothing like what most Western Christians would recognize. No worship bands, no church websites, no parking lots. What there is, in Iran, Algeria, pockets of Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, is a community of people who chose each other at great cost and therefore trust each other at a depth most comfortable churches never reach. The theology emerging from these communities is unusually rooted, unusually serious, unusually focused on suffering, hope, and the long game of faith. Persecution, it turns out, produces a very particular kind of Christian. The Islamic world is demographically one of the youngest religious blocs on Earth. The generation coming of age across Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Afghanistan grew up with smartphones and access to the entire library of human thought. Several researchers have said privately what few will say publicly, that the Islamic world may be approaching a conversion wave that will redefine Christian history in the 21st century. The seeds planted in living rooms, through satellite signals, and in prison cells are still growing. And nobody has found a way to make them stop. So here is the question this story has been carrying from the beginning. How do you explain a movement that grows faster under pressure, that multiplies when it's supposed to disappear, that produces believers so convinced that imprisonment doesn't move them and martyrdom doesn't stop the people behind them? You can reach for sociological explanations, demographics, technology, political disillusionment. All of that is real. But at some point, you are left with the people themselves. The woman in Tehran closing her curtains. The man in Kabul memorizing scripture because his Bible could be confiscated tomorrow. The pastor in Algeria arrested 3 times and currently planting his 4th church. Something is happening in the most locked rooms on earth. And whatever you believe about what is causing it, it is one of the most remarkable human stories of our time. This is how the gospel entered the Islamic world, and not through conquest, not through politics, through a radio signal, a satellite dish on a rooftop, a dream in the middle of the night. One person telling another something they risked everything to say out loud. 14 centuries of locked doors. 50 years of extraordinary growth. Millions of people choosing faith at a cost most of us will never be asked to pay. That is the story, and it is nowhere near finished. Thank you for walking through this with us. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next episode.